The remarks from United States President Donald Trump have triggered a new round of political debate across Europe, coming only days after Washington released its updated national security strategy. The comments were made during a roundtable discussion at the White House, where the president addressed questions on Europe's political trajectory, migration issues, and recent regulatory actions by the European Union. President Trump warned that Europe, in his view, is moving in a direction that risks altering the continent's identity. Speaking to reporters, he said Europe is on a very bad path, linking his criticism to what he described as over-regulation and the impact of mass migration. The new U.S. National Security Strategy, released earlier in the week, places similar emphasis on these themes, arguing that Europe faces what the document calls the potential disappearance of civilization if current migration trends continue. The president's remarks reflected the administration's broader assessment that Europe is over-regulated and at risk of losing cultural cohesion. He stressed repeatedly that Washington wants Europe to preserve its traditional identity. During his exchange with reporters, he said, "Look, Europe has to be very careful. They're doing a lot of things. We want Europe to remain Europe. Europe is on a bad path. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. They're on a bad path." These remarks came as his administration outlined a policy shift that includes engaging with European political actors who oppose current EU approaches to migration and integration. According to the National Security Strategy, the United States is cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory within European nations, indicating a more direct American role in shaping continental political debates. The reaction in Europe has been mixed. European leaders have grown increasingly wary of Washington's positions on migration and on the war in Ukraine, where the US is pressing for renewed negotiations aimed at ending the nearly four-year conflict. European governments fear that pressures coming from Washington may eventually force Kyiv to consider concessions on territory, something EU officials have consistently rejected. The president also sharply criticized a recent decision by the European Union to impose a $140 million fine on Elon Musk's social media platform X. The fine was levied over alleged violations of EU digital regulations. Trump expressed disbelief that the EU could take such action, noting that Musk had not contacted him for assistance. His response was direct. "Wow, that's very nasty. Elon hasn't called me for help with that. But no, it's a difficult thing. I don't think it's okay. No, I don't think it's okay. I don't see how they can do that, no." The remarks align with Musk's own frequent criticism of EU migration and digital regulation policies. Musk, who once maintained a close political relationship with Trump, has recently escalated his rhetoric, calling for sweeping changes to Europe's regulatory systems and even stating that the bloc should be abolished. Trump's comments echo that confrontational tone, contributing to widening tensions between Washington and European capitals. A separate development added to the disagreement. In London, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer reaffirmed that decisions regarding Ukraine's future must remain in Kyiv's hands. Speaking on the situation, he said the principles remain the principles we have been working on for a very long time. We support Ukraine, and if there is to be a ceasefire, it must be a just and lasting ceasefire. That is why it is so important that we reiterate a principle that matters concerning Ukraine are for Ukraine. His comments underscored Britain's alignment with European Union member states that oppose any settlement perceived as forcing Ukraine into a disadvantageous position. European leaders remain concerned that Washington, under President Trump's direction, is shifting toward a diplomatic strategy that could pressure Ukraine into territorial concessions to Russia to bring the war to a close. In Moscow, officials reacted differently. The Kremlin welcomed the shift seen in the US national security strategy. A Russian government representative stated that the new document is largely consistent with Moscow's views, signaling that Russia sees potential diplomatic opportunities in Washington's repositioning. The reaction underscores the contrasting outlooks between Europe and Russia regarding the future of the conflict and the broader strategic environment. Images from Washington show President Trump addressing reporters at the White House, seated at a roundtable discussion where he reiterated concerns about Europe's internal direction and regulatory environment. The footage depicts the president's exchanges with journalists, including questions from the press that prompted his extended comments on migration, European culture, and the tensions between US and EU regulatory approaches. Later scenes show Elon Musk listening to the president during an earlier event, underscoring the connection between Trump's policy positions and the administration's ongoing criticism of EU digital rules. Musk's disputes with European regulators have intensified throughout the year, particularly regarding content moderation, data privacy, and enforcement measures under the EU's Digital Services Act. The contrast between US, European, and Russian perspectives highlights the strategic divergences shaping current transatlantic relations. Trump's administration has argued that Europe's migration policies have weakened its security and cultural stability, while European leaders contend that Washington is underestimating the long-term risks of encouraging internal divisions within the EU. European Union officials have responded by reaffirming their commitment to supporting Ukraine's sovereignty and resisting external pressure that could alter Europe's stance on refugees and border management. Meanwhile, Russia views Trump's new strategic direction as advantageous, suggesting it may open new diplomatic pathways favorable to Moscow's goals. Throughout the exchanges, the themes of migration, regulation, Ukraine, and geopolitical alignment remain at the center of the debate. President Trump's comments signal an intention to press Europe on issues of identity, governance, and burden sharing, while European governments continue to focus on maintaining unity, upholding current security frameworks, and avoiding policies that could fracture the continent's approach to migration and the war. The discussions reflect a broader recalibration of US-European relations as both sides adapt to shifting security priorities, political pressures, and evolving diplomatic strategies. Washington's call for a reassessment of Europe's internal direction adds another layer of complexity to the already strained transatlantic partnership. As the war in Ukraine persists, migration pressures continue, and disputes over technology regulation widen, the gap between Washington and European capitals may continue to grow. The statements made by President Trump illustrate an administration determined to challenge Europe's policy direction, while European leaders insist that their decisions will remain anchored in principles they consider fundamental to the continent's stability. For now, the United States, Europe, and Russia remain engaged in a tense and uncertain geopolitical landscape shaped by conflicting strategies, shifting alliances, and evolving national priorities. President Trump's remarks set the stage for continued friction over migration, regulation, and the future of the Ukraine conflict. The situation continues to develop as all sides assess the implications of Washington's strategic shift, and Europe prepares its response to a growing list of disagreements with the United States. The debate over Europe's direction, US strategy, and the future of Ukraine remains unresolved, with each side preparing for further political and diplomatic challenges in the months ahead. As the discussion unfolds across Washington, Brussels, London, and Moscow, the divide over Europe's future trajectory shows no sign of narrowing. President Trump's statements have added new pressure points to an already strained transatlantic relationship, intensifying debates over migration, regulation, and the US role in shaping Europe's internal political direction. European governments, meanwhile, remain firm in their position that decisions concerning Ukraine, border policy, and regional stability must be guided by principles they consider essential to the continent's long-term security. Russia's endorsement of Washington's revised strategy introduces yet another layer of complexity to the diplomatic landscape, highlighting the competing interests now converging around the war and Europe's geopolitical orientation. With growing uncertainty about the direction of US-EU policy, and with Ukraine's future still at the center of international negotiations, the political tensions driving these debates are likely to deepen as the year progresses.